Welcome to Murder by Nature, where the darkness of true crime, mysterious disappearances, and unsolved cases come alive. If you're ready to jump into this journey with us, let's dive first into the unknown. Our references for today are Riverside District Attorney, San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, Yucaipa Police Department, Riverside County Sheriff's Department, KTLA, ABC, KSQE, don't know if that's right, TV, and all major streaming platforms now, and my own personal experience as we go through this. So the morning of August 22nd, 2025, it arrived heavy, unforgiving. For days, an entire community searched on car and on foot, kind of just going through under floodlights, going into helicopters, like holding out hope that they were going to continue the search and find 7-month-old Emmanuel Haro and that he would be found. But that belief did not survive this morning. Before the sun could fully rise up, that story was shattered. Jake and Rebecca Haro were arrested at their Cabazon home, charged with murder of their own son. Detectives of the Sheriff's Homicide Detail and Special Forces confirmed that they were arrested under 187 murder charges, delivering the words that no one was prepared for hearing. Now, investigators announced that a kidnapping in Yucaipa never occurred. Based on the evidence, they now believe that Emmanuel was deceased, and the search shifted not to a rescue and finding him, but for his remains. Now, when law enforcement moved in, they didn't come in quietly. They moved in fast, forceful. Squad vehicles lined the streets, and multiple patrol cars surged forward, tearing through a fence as officers flooded the property. Commands were shouted, weapons were drawn. Within moments, the house was overtaken, not as a place of refuge, but as a crime scene. Jake and Rebecca Haro were taken into custody, and the reality of this investigation reached its most violent and irreversible moment. After the arrest, the street shifted again. Police investigation started to thin a little bit, and in its place came cameras. Camera crews, reporters, TikTokers, anything and everything that you can think of. Independent creators, onlookers, just trying to understand what they had just witnessed.
News Channel 3 was first at the scene of the investigation this morning. News Channel 3's Emmanuel Haro is live at the scene, has the very latest on this investigation that has now made national headlines.
And I was the first to speak to Vincent Hughes, Jake's attorney, who actually did arrive here about an hour ago. We saw him go up to the scene of the property and left. He did not offer comment, did not answer any questions. Jake and Rebecca Haro, again, have been arrested on suspicion of murder. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department says they are still searching for little baby Emmanuel Haro, but I think the press release and from what's happened kind of tells you what investigators are expecting. This is a they have, and if they've seen any signs of little baby Emmanuel Haro, and you can see the scene right here behind me. It kind of reminds you of Monday when we saw it jam-packed full of people. Fortunately, today, police have blocked off, and a lot of the folks that have been out here, we've seen with bullhorns, with selfie sticks, filming every moment, are kind of at bay right now. But it is starting to calm down here. People have started to disperse, and we are anticipating an update from investigators any minute now. We'll keep you posted on whether or not there's going to be a press conference, and we'll tell you when and where. Be sure and stick with News Channel 3 as we continue to cover the story. For now, I'm live in Cabazon. Back to you guys.
You can see a number of other news outlets there, pretty busy, as outlets from LA all over descend on this location.
Now, the house had been the center of the protest, and speculation became a silent backdrop, kind of to a breaking story that was unfolding. People didn't speak much. They watched, they recorded, and slowly the weight of it settled in. The search was over, but the truth was only beginning to surface. Now, people watched as the investigators worked without pause. methodically searching the property, going through the trash can, the yards, every measurable sense that they were able to look, every space, careful not to miss anything that was in the aftermath of this arrest. Jake's attorney arrived on scene, and he moved aggressively through the scene. He went towards the officers, engaged with them. It was this weird, like, ha ha ha, that's the best way I can put it. And he engaged with them, and then he jumped into his car and left. And this is when TikTokers, myself included, reporters, people just onlooking were screaming at him. What now? Because as we know in previous episode, he was defending these people. He was saying that they were cooperating, that they were doing everything, that they had nothing to do with this. And then this shifted. Now, Jake's stepfather also was on scene, and he stood nearby, kind of in disbelief, watching his home be searched piece by piece. And as this unfolded, we waited. It was quiet, tense, searching for answers that weren't coming. And this is where I met Eddie. So what began as this brief interaction kind of turned into a connection that I'm forever grateful for this day. Eddie paced the scene, stopping when he could to answer questions about what was going on, because he was allowed behind this barricade that we were at. He was allowed to go past it. So he would stop, sharing a little bit of information on what he could, what was available, and then grounding us into the moment that felt like uncertainty until the air kind of just evaporated. Now, as this day drew close, the reality of the arrest settled in. Rebecca Haro was transported to Robert Presley Detention Center, while Jake Haro was booked into Larry D. Smith Correctional Facility. This was all according to arrest records that were able to be looked at online. The flashing lights faded, the shock remained. Neighbors returned to their homes carrying more questions than answers, trying to understand how a search for a 7-month-old baby ended here, ended where we are now. I remember this moment. I was sitting in my truck with waves of nausea and pain that didn't really seem to make sense. And that's when I called one of my dearest friends, Diva. She talked me through all of my feelings, all of my emotions. See, Diva was someone who was by my side from the beginning of this. The minute I put that episode online from the Carl's Jr. parking lot, me and Diva became friends. Now, this whole week, she was just letting me bounce all of my thoughts off of her, all of my emotions off of her. She would listen to me cry when it became so much that I couldn't really get into it anymore. And right now, when I needed her, when I needed to cry, that's what this evening was. I remember coming home, sitting in my living room, and just crying to her on the phone. Now, the community as itself, we barely had time to breathe. We barely had time to get through what was coming next.
The desperate search for missing 7-month-old baby Emmanuel Haro now intensifying. The boy's father, Jake, in an orange jumpsuit Sunday with deputies from the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department in a desolate area along the 60 freeway near Gilman Springs Road. So far, the baby still missing.
2 days later, on Sunday, August 24th, social media ignited once again in this case. Posts began to circulate rapidly, photos, messages, speculation, claiming Jake Haro had been spotted along the side of the 60 freeway in Moreno Valley. Panic, confusion almost instantly spread. People questioned, why was he there? What did he know? Was this where Emmanuel was? What was going on? And rumors moved fast. They moved faster than facts at this point. But law enforcement was able to come out and confirm what many kind of feared but also hoped for at the same time. This was another search looking for Emmanuel. Now, detectives focused most of their efforts along the westbound shoulder of the 60 freeway near Gilman Springs Road. Now, this area is a little unfamiliar. It's kind of unsettling and it's vast. If you go through this area, it's literally mountains and mountains and mountains in between one city to the next. Now, cadaver dogs were brought in at this point, and methodically they worked through this terrain and they investigated any signs of Emmanuel. Jake was also present, and he was accompanied by detectives that were kind of looking through this area and developing kind of this public scrutiny and speculation. I do want to add in here, it's always been thought that Jake went out there to go help them find Emmanuel. He said something. He did something. No, Jake was not out there to help. He stood there. No helping at all. He was only out there for a little bit. And when the search concluded, which maybe lasted less than an hour, authorities released a brief statement, but a devastating update. Emmanuel Haro was not located. Once again, the community was left with suspicion. They were left with grief, frustration. This search, like, it was completed, but nothing came from it. And it kind of sparked across social media. I remember this day, like, it sparked back and forth, like, what was going to happen? Did they find him? Did they not find him? And just overall pain set in. Tuesday, August 26th, this arrived faster than anyone expected. Many in the community had been waiting for this day. Jake and Rebecca Haro were going to go to arraignment for the 187 charge. And now this was supposed to be a moment where questions were finally answered in this courtroom. And for me, probably like many others, I'd never been inside a courtroom. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew that I was going to be there if I could. Early that morning, social media creators, community members flooded that courthouse. I remember this day. Cameras ready, phones live, everyone waiting for answers. Hours passed, and this courtroom door stayed closed. Confusion was spreading quickly. Now, live streams were filled with timelines of speculation. Court was delayed. Court was canceled. The judge didn't want to file charges. There was not enough evidence. The family was inside waiting. The family wasn't here. None of it confirmed. Just noise layered on top of uncertainty. 8:30 came and went. Then 9:30. Then 10:30. Still nothing. While waiting, something unexpected happened. In the comments, an image appeared. This image tore me to pieces. What looked like a baby in a field in the area off the 60 freeway where that search initially took place, and my stomach dropped. I didn't hesitate. I immediately contacted the detectives in this case and reported it. That single comment spread rapidly. It sent shockwaves through the TikTok community as screenshots circulated faster than facts could catch up. But before we go back to that, we're going to go back to court because something was moving along. Just before the midday break, word came down. The actual facts. This delay wasn't a dismissal. It was kind of where the jurisdiction was a little muddy. So this court case was initially in San Bernardino County because that's where the kidnapping took place. That's where the kidnapping took place. But after they were arrested, Riverside County really kind of jumped in because where the Haros lived in Cabazon was in Riverside County. And that's where they initially believed the crime took place. So it was kind of at the standstill while they were transferring everything, making sure they had everything. That's what the delay was for. And then the arraignment was scheduled for 1:30 p.m. that same day. At this point, I wasn't sure if I was going to make it. I remember posting videos saying, like, I have a client call that I have to be at. I need to be somewhere. I'm not going to make it. But with that, like, I resigned myself to, I'm missing this court. This is really going to suck. And then with that schedule shift, I rushed to the courthouse. I had a friend named Selena. She is still one of my followers. She is a great friend of mine. She held that spot for me like nobody's business. No hesitation, no question. She saved my place in line, and I will forever be grateful for her for that. Inside that courtroom, as we walked in, and mind you, there was a crowd. And I ran right through those doors, ran right to her, got right in the front. And I was getting into that courtroom. Inside the courtroom, we sat elbow to elbow, silent, holding our breath. Jake and Rebecca were on opposite ends of this court, never looking at one another, and there was no emotion kind of exchanged. She was looking one way, he was looking this way, no words spoken between the two, and that hearing lasted less than 5 minutes. But it was easy. Bail was set to $1 million each. Arraignment was continued to September 4th, and just like that, it was over. Everyone walked out. Fast, easy, painless. So it seemed.
And for the audience, the court is going to ask that you not use your cell phones during the proceedings. The court has a rule about use of cell phones, so we'll make it easier on our staff. At this time, calling the Jake Haro and Rebecca Haro matter, felony ending in 808.
Your Honor, good afternoon. Brian Costa with the Public Defender's Office. I'm going to appear today for both Jake Haro and Rebecca Haro, who are present in custody before the court.
Good afternoon, Brandon Smith, the people.
Thank you. And good afternoon, Ms. Haro. And good afternoon, Mr. Haro. And Mr. Cosgrove, your request is to continue the arraignment to September 4th?
So many days kind of waiting in between these moments left the community again caught in between what they knew, what they feared, and what still hadn't been answered. Now, as I left this courtroom, I turned to social media to give updates, share what happened, what was going on in court. And that's when that image in my comments came back to life. Diva messaged me, urging me to join a live. It was a live stream on TikTok. This image became the talk of the day. And I told her, okay, send me the link, I'll join. Now, this image, if you are following me at this time, you know exactly what image I'm talking about. And that's when I jumped into Chef Talks live. So Chef Talks on TikTok. I jumped into this live for the very first time, joining the panel as questions started to flood in. I addressed the courtroom updates, the image in my comments, hearing what was happening and transpiring through this day, and reassuring everyone that the information had been reported to detectives handling this case. That is the day that I met so many incredible people. Chef, K-Snaps, Ashley, LS, Mrs. Smith, all of them trying to come together and make sense of what was happening in this case. And it was overwhelming. I had just left court and suddenly I was on this live while I was charging my car and I had so many emotions and I was fielding questions with people that I didn't really know. And I felt worried, but also this engaging community was coming to life. Now, after I got off that live, I did cry a little bit to Diva and I let everything, kind of the weight of it all sink in. The fear, the responsibility, and the heartbreak. It was a lot to process all at once, and I just needed a moment to breathe. Now, I remember after this live, I messaged Chef because this image that was in my comments, it circulated, and so many people were going into lives, were in comments just talking about they found him and they were crying, and it was all stemming from a comment that someone left of an AI photo in my comments. The image wasn't real. It was of someone walking and they paused it and got it right where it looked like there was a child laying in the field. But it wasn't Emmanuel. And I remember messaging him and telling him, like, I'm so sorry, that wasn't me. I don't know what happened. Like, I reported it because I felt the sense of responsibility to what was going on. Now, as the days passed, Rebecca and Jake kind of gave these half-hearted single interviews to the press. Now, this isn't recorded, but we saw them, we read them, and each insisted that their story was true, that they were good parents, that this one didn't have any involvement, this one could have never done anything, but that narrative would soon be shattered. Because we know that that's not the story. That's not what happened. On August 27th, 2025, during a press conference with Riverside County District Attorney and law enforcement, officials delivered the shocking evidence that they had, the details. They said that they had a pretty strong indication of the location of where Emmanuel's remains are and called the alleged murder preventable in numerous ways. Authorities revealed that the child had been severely abused over a period of time and that both parents had been aware of this abuse. Riverside County District Attorney Michael Hestring, I think I'm saying his name right, stated bluntly, the filing in this case reflects our belief that baby Emmanuel was abused over time, that eventually, and because of that abuse, he succumbed to those injuries. He referred to Jake's past. He described as an experienced child abuser who should have gone to prison for abusing a previous child with his ex-wife back in 2018. We did this in part 1. If you guys don't know that story, go back and listen. Instead, a judge granted him probation, an error that the district attorney said was outrageous. He was given a prison sentence. It was a prison case, and he was given probation. Tragically, that child has been left with 3% of their brain. They can't talk. They can't move. They slowly rely on care from individuals. If that judge had done his job as he should have, Emmanuel would be alive today, he stated. The words were a gut punch to the community. The tragedy pattern from abuse to Emmanuel's preventable death, and it made one thing clear. There was not one single lapse, not one isolated incident that resulted in the case of where we are today. This was a history of choices, failures, and repeated abuse. And the public was forced to confront the reality that this was far darker than anyone had imagined. Court dates came and went, each one promising progress, but ending with the same all the time. More delays, more time needed, not guilty pleas from both parties, Jake and Rebecca, over time, it became clear that they would get public defenders. We knew that they were. At that initial court date, we knew that they were going to have to get separate public defenders. One was going to be court appointed, and one was going to be from the public defender's office. And that's when it came. Rebecca Haro was assigned to Jeff Moore. Jake received Paulette Garthwaite. Now, these were the same attorneys that represented the Turpin parents in their case. And if you don't know that case, we will cover it. At the initial court date, everyone expected public defenders, but no one anticipated that they would be these public defenders. I sure didn't. And now the months of waiting, speculation, the emotional investment finally led to October 16th, 2025. This day would shock the media. It would shock social platforms. It would shock everybody that followed this case. I showed up that morning thinking that it would be like any other court date, but something felt different. That unknown, that anxiety, that frustration. You're kind of just sitting there waiting for you to be called back, waiting for something to happen. But if you're like me, I'm watching as I'm waiting. I'm anticipating what's going on. I'm looking around. And inside that courtroom, tension hung in the air. Rebecca's lawyer and the DA paced back and forth between courtroom to courtroom to courtroom that whole day before disappearing into a back room for 10 to 15 minutes. I remember this day. I remember just looking at them, watching them, going back and forth, and then sliding into this courtroom. Now, when they finally returned, the public was finally allowed to go in to court. I remember this moment vividly, sitting there, the muffled sounds of Jake crying, the confusion mixed with this anticipation of what is going to happen. Because I was certain. I would have bet my life on what I thought was going to happen in that court. We talked about it. We were on lives. I remember talking with Chef and everyone, case staffs, all of us kind of going back and forth. What's going to happen in court? What do you think is going to happen? What are you anticipating? And I was 10 toes down. Nothing's going to change. They're too selfish. And then the session began, like every other court, until it wasn't. Judge Pollack asked the defendants, had they received the amended charges, the ones that were updated? Jeff Moore confirmed that Rebecca had. She pled not guilty. And then the room went silent. Jake Haro confirmed he had received the new amended charges. But the weight that was about to happen kind of clung to this air. It felt different. It felt weird. It felt suffocating. And in that moment, the shock that stunned everyone.
Okay. Turning to Mr. Haro, Ms. Garthwaite, Ms. Lowe, did you receive a copy of the amended felony complaint?
Your Honor, we did receive a copy of that amended felony complaint. We're prepared to arraign Mr. Haro on that amended felony complaint. Stipulate he's been advised of his legal and constitutional rights, waive formal reading and advisement. And Your Honor has in front of you our change of plea from not guilty to guilty.
Jake Mitchell Haro entered guilty pleas to one count, each of murder, child endangerment, and falsifying a police report. Now, this wasn't a part of any plea deal. He didn't get a plea deal. He pled to the sheet. He pled to the judge. And that would mean that the judge would now determine his sentence without negotiation. So the DA and all of them, they weren't going to negotiate this anymore. That shock, the shock that felt through that courtroom, the cries, the tears, the pain, it just went through. And social media and everything that followed after this, it was like you were waiting for something to change. You're waiting for him to say not guilty. You're waiting for him to take it to trial. You knew in your heart that they did something, but you didn't anticipate what was going to happen. And I remember that earth-shattering news when it came. Now that brings us to the end of this episode. So if you enjoyed listening to Murder by Nature, which I hope you did, please come back next Wednesday for part 4 of the Emmanuel Haro case. We're going to dive into this day, what happened, the community and how everyone talked about it, and then the sentencing of Jake Mitchell Haro. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you do, please like me on TikTok, all streaming platforms, anywhere and everywhere that you can find. And until then, I am Jasmine Ramirez, reminding you to stay vigilant, stay safe, and remember, don't get murdered. And for the love of all things holy, please don't become a murderer.